Hi everyone, this is Debbie with Book and BuJo. Welcome if you're new, welcome back if you've been here before. It's so great to have you here as I go through my May Readathon wrap-up. In May, I read 26 books. It was a lot. And stay tuned for my May wrap-up of all of the books that I read. I will have that coming out for you soon. But today we're going through the two readathons that I participated in May, which was Gooberathon with the BuJo Buddies and May the Force Read With You with Erik from Break Even Books. First up, Gooberathon, and that is with BuJo Buddies and Jashi Curran. And I will leave her channel and the announcement video linked down below for you. But Gooberathon was a bingo board. And you could do just a bingo, one direction, however many directions you wanted, and you get specific points for the specific prompts, as well as for completing a bingo. And then you could also get blackout, which if you know me by now, you know I'm gonna do the blackout if I can. I actually did it. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it, but I did. I ended up reading as many of the short books as possible as I could towards the end of the month, and then stuck the long one there at the end, and I ended up finishing it. So that was exciting. I think I did swap out one or two books that I had in there. There's 25 prompts for the bingo board, and I read 26 books. So I think I took one of the big books off and put another one of the smaller books in its place. But let's go ahead and go through all the prompts and see what book I read for it. So the first prompt was to read a reread, and for that I read The Exile by Ryan Cahill, and this is the second novella in the Bound and the Broken series, and I love this book. I love this series. If you have not checked out the series, you have to. The first book is good, the second book is great, and the novella is amazing. The Fall is also really good. That's the prequel novella, and you can read it before or after of Blood and Fire. It doesn't really matter what order. They're all so good. I love them. Completing that square gives you 2 points. Now the next square, if we're going across the top this direction, is to read the next book in a series, and that gives you 3 points. And I read Going Postal by Terry Pratchett, and that is the 33rd book in the Discworld series. The third prompt in the first line is to read a Book Buddy approved book. This is basically a book recommendation from someone that you trust. And for this I read An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon, and this one was recommended last month in the Autism Acceptance Readathon by all of the hosts, so it was definitely a beloved book. And I did read it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's kind of a sci-fi fantasy, and it was really interesting. And it kind of delves into racism and classism and a whole bunch of other isms in there. But it was a very interesting book and written really well. Prompt number 4 got you just 1 point, and that is to read a book at the top of your TBR. And for that I read Last Stand of the Stone Fist by Michael R. Miller, and this is it's kind of a prequel novella to the Songs of Chaos series, but it's suggested that you read the first book in the series first, which I believe is Ascendant, and then you would read The Last Stand of the Stone Fist, because it talks about a couple of the characters that are in that book, and then you would read Unbound, the second book in the series, after this one. And I think that's a good way to go. You could read this one first, but I think it's more impactful reading it after you've read the first book. And the final prompt of the first line was also just 1 point, and that was to read a color wheel pick, and I had got blue, and so I read Origins of a Guildmaster by A.M. Eno, and this is a short little novella, and it sounds like it's probably going to be part of a series, but I don't think there's any other books out in it. But it was definitely very interesting, and I did complete that one. I did get all of those done, so I did get that bingo, which gives you an extra 5 points every time you complete a line. So it's 5 points. So if you get all of them, you get 5 points for each of them, which is cool. So second line, first prompt was read a book from an author that you love. And for this one, I went a different route. I went the nonfiction route, and I read Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday, and I did complete that one, and I did really enjoy this. I I really do like Ryan Holiday's writing. He's a great author. Next up, a 3-word title for 2 points, and from an author you love was only 1 point. And I read Where's My Cow by Terry Pratchett, and this is a children's short story that comes after Thud, which is the 34th book in the Discworld series, and it was just adorable. I think you definitely need to read Thud first and then read this one, and then you get the heartwarming aspect of it. And yeah, it was super good. Totally enjoyed it. It's, you know, it's super short, maybe 40 pages, and it's like fully illustrated. It's so cute. For 2 points, the next square is a book that has won an award, and for that I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and I did definitely enjoy that one, and I gave that one 4 stars. For 3 points, the next square is a book that was adapted to a movie or a TV series, and for that I read The Princess Bride, and it was interesting. So the story itself was really good, but the way parts of it is written was somewhat confusing, a little interesting, but also feel like it took away from the story a little bit. I don't know, it was weird. It's written like it was a book that was read to the author as a child, but the book was like super long and had all these descriptions about like the food, like a whole chapter just on descriptions of the food at this meal. And so I'm thinking, oh, is this, so I want to look up this other author and maybe read the original, because this person basically took kind of an annotated version of that book. And yeah, no, it was all just made up. The original story isn't a real thing, you know, it was just part of the Princess Bride story. But it kind of like goes into all of that. So you're in the modern day author's story, and then you go into the Princess Bride, and then you kind of go back into his story, and then back into the Princess Bride. And they do that a bit in the movie, but it's totally different. Yeah, so yeah, aspects of it I loved. Aspects of it I thought was okay, but the movie is amazing. And for 1 point, read a book with your favorite topic or trope. And for that, I read Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire, and I do like portal fantasies, and this is a portal fantasy book, and I did enjoy this one. We are now up to row 3. A book that intimidates you, and this is for 3 points. And I read 1984 by George Orwell. This is definitely a beloved classic for most people, and just the whole thing of it was kind of intimidating to me, because I know it's like a government-controlled society, and I felt like it was going to be really deep, and I may not get it because I'm not always the smartest cookie in the batch. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was really interesting. The whole propaganda and the brainwashing aspect of it was interesting, and just, yeah, it was definitely an intriguing book, and I'm glad I read it. For 1 point, a book you picked because of the cover, and that is The Canopy Keeper by Veronica G. Henry. And I'll have to put up the color image of it because it's stunning, and I just thought this was so interesting. The cover, it just looked really cool, and the book itself was actually really good. I enjoyed it. It's interesting take on nature and humans interacting with each other, and how the cause and effect of everything. It was very interesting. And then for 1 point, read a book. Any book. Just pick a book and read it. And so I read The Picture of Dorian Gray, the graphic novel, and of course this is by Oscar Wilde, and also Eddington and Colbard. It doesn't have their first names on here. I'm sure they're in here somewhere. I.N.J. Colbard was who did the illustration, and it was adapted by Ian Eddington. And of course this was like a graphic novel, and it was pretty much the book of The Picture of Dorian Gray. So if you haven't read it before and you're not sure if you want to read a classic, go ahead and pick this one up. It got the gist across really well. It's not quite as in-depth as the book itself, And mine is kind of falling apart. I have sections coming out, but that's what happens when it's an old library book. And you get it for free. Yeah, so it's really fun. The illustrations are really good, and it was definitely the picture of Dorian Gray in comic form. For 2 points, read a book out of your comfort zone. And again, I am not a children's book person. Comics and graphics are growing on me, but I prefer like a big chunky 500 to 800 page fantasy novel over most everything else. But I did pick up Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jomny Sun, and that was so adorable. It was very sweet. It's like a 200 something, 250 page children's book, and it was really cute. So I read it all in one sitting pretty much. There's not necessarily a lot of words on every page. It's just the really great illustrations. The illustrations are amazing. So good. It's a very heartwarming book, and I am actually very glad I read it. I did give it 3.5 stars, which is pretty darn good for a children's book for me. For 2 points, the last prompt on the third line is to read a book by an author from another country, and I read Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson, and I believe he is from the United Kingdom, and I am not. This was a great book. This was one of my top rated books for the month. All right, now we're on to line number 4, almost there. And this one for 1 point is a recently acquired book, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And this is the graphic novel, illustrated by Mark Spender and retold by Jim Pipe. And this one is actually in color. The other one I had was in black and white. But this one was really good. Again, you get the full gist of the story without a lot of the frustration and details of the original book. So I loved Wuthering Heights, and I understand why people like it. Like, you viscerally feel for all of these characters. Like, you either love them or you just hate these characters and the choices that they make. And this gives you the same gist of all of that without quite the extent of the feeling for each of the characters. So if you want to dip a toe into Wuthering Heights and see if it's for you, I would recommend starting out with this little graphic novel, and then if you like that, then you can kind of get into the book and get into the nitty-gritty of everything. But it was good. For 2 points, read a TBR vet. And I read The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake. This is the second book in the Atlas series, and I do have the first one over here off screen. You can't see it. And I read that one 2 years ago. I think I got this one 2 Christmases ago. So Christmas of 2022. And it's just been sitting on my shelf for 2 years, and I finally read it. Thank you, Gooberathon, for getting me to read this one. I did like the first book better, but I still enjoyed this one. For 3 points, read a book that was released this year, and I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and I had so much fun with this book. It was definitely interesting and a good time. For 1 point, read a book with 300 pages or less, and I read Midnight Comes by L.M. Hatchell, and this is a prequel novella to the Midnight series. The last prompt of the fourth line is for 2 points, and that is to read for a book club. And for that, I read Thud, the 34th book in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, and I am reading through the Discworld series with Literary Diversions and the Around the Disc in 800 read-along. Last line for 2 points, read a book with multiple authors, and I read All of Our Demise by Amanda Foody and Christine Lynn Henry, and that is the second book in the All of Us Villains series. I believe it's just a duology, and it was a great ending to the series. Next up, for 1 point, a community pick, and I did a poll on the Discord channel for Gooberathon, and I think I put up 2 or 3 different books, and it was a tie for most of the time. And this one came out with 1 vote ahead, and that was Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell, and this is the first book in the Spellslinger series, and I did read this one, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. For 1 point, the middle square of the bottom line is mood read, and I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and I definitely enjoyed this one. It was such a cozy fantasy. This is like a hot chocolate and in a comfy blanket, snuggling on the couch with a rainstorm outside. So cute. All right, 2 more squares to go. For 2 points, a new to you author. And for that, I read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. And this was a great book, 4.5 stars. And the last square for 3 points, a book that's over 500 pages. And for that, I read The Prophet of Edan by Philip Chase, who is an amazing booktuber here on BookTube, and I will leave his channel linked down below. This is a great series, and you should definitely read it. And that completed my Gooberathon TBR, and I got my blackout. So all of the squares are colored in, are highlighted in purple, and I completed it. It was great. And I'm really looking forward to next year to see what they're going to do, because this is going to be an annual readathon. And again, I will leave all of the information linked down below in case you want to check it out for next year. And then I participated in May the Force Read With You, and that is by Erik with Break Even Books. Now, I did not complete every single solitary prompt, but that's okay because there was a lot of prompts. And you gotta save some for next year, right? My character name was Teseo, and her species is a Togruta. And for this species, you had to read a specific book. For the Togruta species, you had to read a book with an illustrated cover, and for that I did read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte and adapted or retold by Jim Pipe. Again, if you want to dip your toe into this book to see if you actually want to read the whole novel, check this one out first. So Teseo's calling is a bounty hunter, and she's going to be part of the Bounty Hunter Guild, which is a neutral profession. So she's not on the light side, she's not on the dark side, she's neutral in between. And you have to get at least 15 points to reach a guild master level, and Teseo did do that, and so she is a bounty hunter guild master. For abilities, these are your powers. You get 2 points for every neutral prompt that you read, and then 1 point for every light or dark prompt that you read. And for the telekinesis prompt, you had to have a hand on the cover, and for that I read All of Our Demise by Amanda Foody and Christine Lynn Henry, the second book in the All of Us Villains series, and that's a neutral prompt. So I'll list all of my neutral prompts first, and then I'll go into the light prompts and the dark prompts. So the next neutral prompt was Force Healing, and that is to read a book with cozy vibes. And for that I read Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire, which is the first book in the Wayward Children series. And then Battle Meditation. Do a random number generator from 1 to 3 or roll a die. And I, of course, got 3. So you had 0, 1, 2, or 3. So there was 4 options, and I got 3. But that's okay. So that's how many books you have to read, is whatever the number is. Then I read Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jomny Sun, Thud, the 34th book in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, and The Prophet of Edan by Philip Chase. Force Empathy, still a neutral prompt. You have to DNF a book or do a reread. I chose a reread since I don't really DNF books. I think I've DNF'd 1, maybe 2 books in the last 3 or 4 years, so yeah, I'd rather just finish it and see what I think of the book in total than stop partway through. And for that, I did reread The Exile by Ryan Cahill. This is the novella that comes after the second book of Darkness and Light in the Bound the Broken series. Doppelganger, 2 of the same things on the cover, and for that I chose The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde and adapted by Ian Eddington. And so we've got 2 eyes here, we've got another eye here, we got 2 eyes over here on this cat, and of course 2 hands as well. So definitely 2 or more of the same object on the cover. All right, last of the neutral prompts, precognition. do a dice roll, so a 6-sided die, and you roll it, and then that number is associated with certain letters, and then that is the letter that your book needs to start with. And I rolled a 5, which means I needed to find a book that started with the letter S, and I read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I did only do one light prompt, and that was Plant Surge. Read a book with trees on the cover. And for that, I read Canopy Keepers by Veronica G. Henry. I did read books for 3 of the dark prompts. The first one is Drain Knowledge, start a series. And for that, I read Midnight Comes by L.M. Hatchell, and this is the prequel novella to the Midnight series. The second dark prompt that I did was Drain Essence. Font size. The author name needs to be a bigger font than the title. And I actually had a couple of options for this one, but I went with Going Postal, the 33rd book in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. And then the last dark prompt was Force Lightning. Your main character has powers. And for that, I read Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell, the first book in the Spellslinger series. Next up was Invaluables, and you get a point for each of the prompts that you complete, and there are 9 prompts. So there's 3 different sections: companions, starships, and weapons. There was 2 prompts I did not complete out of these, and they were both for the companions, which was kind of sad. The first one was Fathier. Someone looks unhappy on the cover. And I was going to choose Wuthering Heights for that one, and I ended up swapping it to a different prompt instead. And then the other one was Porg, a round object on the cover, and I was going to do The Girl on the Moon for that one, and that didn't happen. I didn't read that until July. So, what you gonna do? All right, but I did complete a Volptex, and that is a book that has crystals or ice on the cover, and for that I read An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. For the starships, you can get a TIE Fighter, a Falcon, or an X-Wing. And for the TIE Fighter, the prompt is to read a book with people with formal or fancy clothes on the cover, and for that I read Bride by Allie Hazelwood. For the Falcon, you need a number or an animal in the title, and for that I read Where's My Cow by Terry Pratchett, the little short story in between the 34th and 35th books in the Discworld series. And for the X-Wing, you have to have an X in the title or the author's name, and for that I read The Atlas Paradox by Olive E. Blake. The last invaluable section was the weapons. For a blaster, you need to read a book with a weapon on the cover. And for that I read Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. And this is the first book in the Ernest Cunningham series. For a lightsaber, the title and the author's name needed to be in a different color, and I actually had a couple of books that had that as well. But for this one, I went with 1984 by George Orwell. And lastly, a bowcaster, a book that sounds like it was made for you. And for that, I read The Last Stand of the Stone Fist by Michael R. Miller, again, the prequel novella to the Songs of Chaos series, and you read this after Ascendant and before Unbound. Next up, you have partners. Are you going to have assistants, or you can have allies, or you can have accomplices, or all of them? So assistants, you get 2 points neutral. For allies, it's 1 point light. And for accomplices, it's 1 point for dark side. And my character is a neutral character, so I can get points from dark, light, and neutral, which is pretty cool. If you're a light side person, you can get points from light and neutral, but not from the dark side, and then vice versa with the dark side. So as neutral, you could do all of the prompts, or all of the points, which is pretty cool. For assistants, I went with Droids, a book that has advanced technology, and for this one, I read The 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin. And then my other assistant is a smuggler, and that's your main character has your dream job, and for that, I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. So I grew up with my parents owning a bakery, and I always dreamed of having my own little cafe or bakery, and this book was right up my alley for that. Now for my allies, Rebel Alliance. Read a book that was published in the month that you were born, which is December, and for that I read Origins of a Guildmaster by A.M. Eno. For the Resistance, read an adaptation, and for that I read The Princess Bride by William Goldman. Accomplices, Galactic Empire, a book you feel pressured to read. And for that I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, the first book in the Empyrean series. And it's a very hyped book. Everybody seemed to have loved it, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it as well. And then The First Order, the title starts with one of your initials. And for that I read Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday, D for Debbie. And that was all the book prompts. And now we get into the monikers and the achievements. For the monikers, I did miss one of the prompts, but that's all right. So, powerful, chaotic, indifferent, and ascended. Complete 6 neutral prompts from your abilities up here, which I did do that. I did exactly 6. And then for caring, beloved, charming, and mesmerizing, complete all 3 companion prompts, and I only completed 1, so I am not charming or mesmerizing or beloved, but that's okay. Maybe next year. And then crafty, shifty, driven, and swift, complete all 3 starship prompts, which I did. I figured that was probably a little more important for a bounty hunter than the caring and charming prompt. And then deadly, lethal, ruthless, and vicious, which I also thought was very important for a bounty hunter. And that was to complete all 3 weapons prompts, which I did. And then friendly, worship, desire, and wanted, complete 4+ partner prompts, which I did complete all 6 of those. So I did complete that one. And then for achievements, ace, racer, and captain, read 250 pages in 1 day, which I easily did by reading Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jomny Sun, which was 256 pages, and I read that all in one sitting because it is an illustrated children's book. Agent, spy, and mole, again, I think that's probably important for a bounty hunter, and that is to complete 10+ ability and partner prompts. And I did complete 10 ability prompts, and I completed 6 of the partner prompts. Doing good so far. Engineer, craftsman, and technician, read 10+ books, and I read 26. So, check. Medic, healer, and caretaker, which I think is also very important if you're a bounty hunter. You need to be able to fix yourself if something happens. And that is to read 2,024+ pages, and I read over 5,000 pages for May. So, again, check. Swordmaster, gladiator, and warrior, again, good for a bounty hunter. And for that, read a book over 600 pages, which again, Prophet of Edan was 800. It was definitely over 700 pages, and that's by Philip Chase. So got that one done. I did not complete the last prompt, which was Wrangler, Tamer, and Keeper, which would have been important, but I didn't quite get to that one. And that was to complete all invaluable prompts, and I did all but 2. So that was kind of a bummer, but maybe next year I will be able to complete every prompt, which you absolutely do not need to complete every prompt. You could read 2 books and still have completed the readathon. But I gotta complete them all. I don't know why, but I must be able to check off all the boxes I don't like when I can't check them all off. But I'm learning to let go and be okay with not having everything done. It's much better for my sanity that way. So I did complete both Gooberathon and May the Force Read With You, and they were super fun month-long readathons, and I will definitely leave them linked down below if you want to check them out. While you're down checking out the description box, go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know if you participated in either of these readathons or if you participated in a different one, and I hope you had a lot of fun and were able to read the books that you wanted to for those. Upcoming, I do have my June readathon wrap-up, and then I also have my May and June wrap-up, monthly wrap-ups with my stats that should be coming fairly soon. I may combine them, but that would be like 32 books all in one. That might be a little much for one video. We'll see. I will probably keep them separate, but either that or just rapid fire. Here's the book I read and here's the rating I gave it. I may do it that way and just do May and June all in one, and then I can do a Q2 wrap up after that. Maybe I'll do that. I might do that. So those are coming up. And if you made it this far in the video, if they have some kind of lightsaber down in the comments or Star Wars emoji of some kind, leave that down in the comments below. or just leave a red or a green heart to let me know that you're here. And until next time, keep reading. Bye! And I read Wuthering Heights by Jane Eyre. No, by Jane Eyre.